want to have peace and sustainable peace, we need education of all, but particularly women, girls.
سواد می‌داشتم و محتاج هیچ کس نبودم. امیدوارم که مادر دختری به سواد نماند زنای افغانستان.
It is my responsibility to make sure that all the little girls in this country who have a dream of becoming educated don't get their dreams snatched away from them.
UNESCO raises a pen for girls' education. That's why we are joining forces with Make Mothers Matter, because girls' education leads not only to a better future for her, but to a better society for all of us.
I believe education is an engine for regional development, peace, and prosperity. Girls have the same right to education as the boys.
If we educate a man, we educate a person. If we educate women, we educate a family and society.
They have the absolute right to benefit from learning and education.
To hold and raise this pen today as a torchbearer for a safe, accessible, gender-sensitive education for all girls.
I raise my pen for education of girls in Afghanistan.
They want to continue to raise their pen. Let's join them.
I'm raising my pen in support of this campaign to promote the girls' education. It's not only the basic human rights, but it's also the key to change the mentality of society.
I'm so proud to be able to support Make Mothers Matter and to raise this pen in support of women and girls' education at this very critical moment in Afghanistan.
Hello, and welcome to all of you from wherever you are. I'm Anne-Claire de Liedekerke, President of Make Mothers Matter, MMM, and on behalf of the MMM teams, I would like to thank you for joining us. Today is UN-designated International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. This event was planned to coincide with this day because denying education to girls and women is a form of violence and a negation of a basic human right. With us in this campaign, we have partners and supporters. Our partners, Mothers for Peace in Afghanistan and the Farkhunda Trust for Afghan Women's Education. They are both members of the MMM network of grassroots organizations, and they were instrumental in the building up of this campaign in Afghanistan. We are very grateful to them and to our supporters, the many organizations whose logo you will find on our website, www.raiseapen.org. One of our key supporters, UNICEF, sent us a message that I would like to read to you. UNICEF is proud to support your work to help ensure that every girl in Afghanistan can realize her right to education, particularly the most marginalized girls. Education is one of the best investments we can make in a girl's future and translates into social and economic prosperity for girls themselves and for countries recovering from COVID-19. So now you just saw our mobilization video. How can we not be moved by the looks in the eyes of these little girls? Why would education be denied to them? Well, at this critical moment in the country's history, denying education to girls could happen in Afghanistan. And Afghan people, Afghan women are fighting for this right. And they want the international community, that's all of us and beyond, to be aware of what is at stake right now in their country. This is how the campaign Raise a Pen started, to answer the call of Afghan mothers and to create a civil society movement to be heard by those who take and implement the decisions. So we will have all to take part, and suggestion of how you can take part will be made at the end of this session. I will now introduce Rahela Sidiqi. She is one of those amazing Afghan women. She's the founder and director of the Farkhunda Trust for Afghan Women's Education, and she has a very powerful message to deliver to this audience. Please listen to her.
According to a recent report by the United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan, UNAMA, 4 out of 10 casualties of war and conflict are women and children. Women have not been involved in war and conflict, but mostly suffered. These statistics are difficult to accept and must be addressed as a matter of urgency. At the Farkhunda Trust, we believe Afghan women can and will be great agents of change for sustainable peace building and development. They will do it with the power of education. But they need resources and support from their international allies. Afghan women leaders have shown that they are capable and can make a difference. Look at Fatima Giannini, member of the peace negotiation delegation, or Dr. Sima Samar, women's rights activist and human rights affairs minister of state, or many others. They are shining examples of what happens when they use their determination, courage, and resilience to overcome challenges. Afghan women can and will be instrumental in providing human capital for the elimination of violence and eradication of poverty. But this they can only achieve if their access to education is not limited. It says in 96 verses of Holy Quran, Surah Al-Haqq, Allazi alamal bil qalami, he who taught the use of pen. Education is one of the key engines of development and prosperity, the cornerstone for freedom and democracy. Afghan women represent 51% of the population. They are strong catalysts for driving sustainable development and change. There can be no going back for them. The only way is forward. We ask the international community, the decision makers, those with influence to support the right of every girl and woman in Afghanistan to continued education. We need Afghan women's voice to be part of the global conversation. Only then can there be sustainable peace in our country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rahela, for these strong words introducing today's conversation. And I will turn now to Mary Kaldor, who very kindly accepted to moderate this panel discussion. Mary Kaldor is from LSE, London School of Economics, where this conversation began 1 year ago. And as director of the Conflict and Civil Society Research Unit, you are the perfect person to lead a most interesting and inspiring discussion. Thank you, Mary.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me. And it's very exciting that this campaign is getting as far as it is. It's long been recognized that girls' education is critical for development, but increasingly we are becoming aware that girls' education is also critical for ending conflicts. Now, first of all, I want to welcome everybody who's listening. I gather we have more than 200 people watching on this webinar, so that's great. You're welcome, and you can put questions in the Q&A, and I hope they'll get fielded to me. And welcome to our really wonderful panel. You can find their bios on the website of Make Mothers Matter, but I will introduce them briefly as each of them speak. What I'm going to do is to ask them all a couple of questions, have a little bit of discussion among ourselves, and then the discussion will be open to our listeners who can put forward questions. Now, there's one rule I wanted to make, which is that you're all of you on the panel are very welcome to jump in if you want to add something to what's been said. My one question is, when you want to speak, simply raise a pen. And what I hope is that we can make raising a pen the sign that everybody uses when they want to speak on Zoom, because that would be a way of promoting the campaign. So don't forget, raise a pen when you want to speak. So I'm going to, the question that I am going to start with is a very simple question, which is to all of the speakers, and for them to answer very briefly, why is this campaign so important? And I'm going to start with Her Excellency Rangina Hamidi, who is Minister of Education of the government of Afghanistan, and is somebody who,
unfortunately, Her Excellency has not arrived yet. So we are expecting her, and I will let you know for sure when she arrives.
Okay, that's fine. So in that case, we will go straight on to Stefania Giannini, who is Assistant Director General for Education at Unesco. And we'll start with Stefania.
Thank you very much, Mary. Thank you, and good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, to everybody. This is a very international room and a global room. I'm very pleased and happy to join you in this wonderful event organized by Mary, Make Mothers Matter, a great partner of UNESCO, and together with us. And I'm very happy to stand up, raising my pen for girls' education in Afghanistan. You put a question, a very clear one, a very simple one, why it's so important. I think it's so important first because we know that girls' education, educating a girl is one of the most powerful investment we can do for development, to build a better society, to have a real strong impact on other sectors beyond education itself. And it's so important because it's not only very good, of course it is for girls exclusively, but it's very important for building a new kind of mindset and reinforcing social cohesion in the communities and in society. So you invest in girls' education, you invest in the future. That's why UNESCO put this as one of the main priorities in education, in our agenda globally. That's why UNESCO last year, as a side event of the G7, launched an initiative. I want to recall the title because it's very much about what I try to summarize a bit, addressing your question, Mary. Our education, our future. That means that we want to collect globally better data in order to inform a better policy, and we want to share the best practices we see around the world. This is what UNESCO is doing in many countries of the world. This is what we are concretely trying to put on the ground in terms of education policy. Let me mention Nigeria, where we accelerated literacy among female garment workers in Cambodia, for instance, or in marginalized segment of society. And here in Afghanistan, we are working closely with the government to mainstream gender into all aspects of the education system. And this is our engagement, this is our commitment to contribute to this so important mission we have.
Well, thank you very much. And it's so important that UNESCO is doing all this. The second person I'm going to turn to is Ambassador Melanne Verveer. Milan has been an amazing promoter of women and women's education for many years. She was Chief of Staff to Hillary Clinton when she was First Lady. She was President Obama's Ambassador for Women, and now she runs the Center for Women, Peace and Security at Georgetown University. So, Milan, we are very delighted to have you and to hear what you have to say.
Well, thank you so much, Mary, and thank you to everyone engaged with this campaign, which is so important. It's always been important to educate a girl, to educate women, and particularly now, it's at this moment in the history of Afghanistan, raising this pen is critically important, as never before, perhaps. I'm very proud to come together with the mothers of Afghanistan who have already gone through so much. I think back to the late 1990s and what was happening when the Taliban were ruling Afghanistan. And we confronted that horror of, in so many ways, but particularly that a girl could not go to school. And those efforts to harbor her in homes in hopes that somehow education could be transmitted and that longing could be accomplished. And then thinking about what education represents, as Governor Sarabi so wonderfully said in the video, to educate a girl is to educate a family, to educate a community, to educate a nation. I've always been taught in all of my experience that the single best development investment that can be made anywhere in any country is to invest in a girl, because that investment has so much in terms of what is derived from it, how she conducts her life. Marriage is postponed. Child marriage is a problem still. Her investment in her own future in terms of her potential income, what she does for her family in terms of nutrition, in terms of their own education, what she's able to do with them, and what she grows in confidence, in participation in her society, in the influence she can have wherever she goes. So it is one of the most critical investments that can be made. And I think we have to keep that in mind. The other thing I often ask myself is, why are the extremists so terrified of an educated woman? What is it about education that they so oppose that for them it is perhaps one of the single biggest dangers that they confront in their maniacal efforts? I think of Malala, who took a bullet from the Taliban just because she advocated for girls' education. The price has been paid by many. The risks are great because this is perhaps the most critical investment that can be made. We know talent is universal, and it is certainly true among the Afghans, and the women have demonstrated that in spades. But opportunity is not universal, and we have to make the opportunity for an education something that every girl, every woman, all of society can have for the better future that they deserve. So I'm very happy to stand with the mothers of Afghanistan today.
You're right. So thank you so much. And now I'm going to ask Ambassador Naeemi, who is the Afghan ambassador to the United Nations. I think you need to unmute yourself. I just noticed that unmute is one of the new words that has appeared in this year's Oxford English Dictionary.
Thank you very much. And it's a great honor for me to be in this very honored, distinguished panel. It is really a great honor for me, and I will try my best to be focused and brief and limited myself to the question. Otherwise, I have a couple of points to raise it and to share it with you and with those who are joining us in this event, particularly in the area of the permanent mission of Afghanistan to the United Nations, which fortunately lead by Ambassador Ross, which she is a woman, an educated woman. So I will come, even though absolutely Her Excellency Sorabi, the phrase she said, I think it is response to your question. And the phrase was said, in the statement was said by Her Excellency Ambassador Milan was really response to the first question. But still, I will come to that. Campaign is very important. It is absolutely investment in the future. In the future for long term, not only in Afghanistan, everywhere in every country, particularly those countries are facing challenges, multiple challenges, not challenges, like Afghanistan. So investment in women is really investment in the future of that country and the nation. Education for a girl is a key. We know that education greatly contributes to the happiness and well-being of the children. Education is the engine for development and progress, prosperous life, not only for the family, but for the nation and for the society. In Afghanistan, I would be very brief again regarding the education and the education for girls, because we have our Her Excellency Minister. She will be briefing us and she will be sharing her thoughts on education to girls in Afghanistan. But I will share a small story, which I think it will be responding to the importance of the education. Situation in Afghanistan is not like 20 years before. 20 years before, there were very limited girls going to school. I really don't think so that limited, and a little number has opportunity to go for education. Today, we have a big number, a large number of girls are going to school or interested to go to school, but still obstacles and challenges are there. I would be really suggesting to think about the main obstacles and main challenges for the girls' schools. Two principal issues are very important. One is the intention and the policy issue, which is absolutely the responsibility of the government. The policy is absolutely that the girls should get the education and has equal right like boys and equal right like others. Even though, as Sorabi said, girls' education is much important and it can play a greater role in supporting the society and the nation. But regarding the atmosphere, it is different. It needs discussion, because the biggest obstacle for the girls' education today in Afghanistan is security. One of the biggest obstacles is security. If the school is not safe, if the education center is not safe, I really don't know how the mothers will be feeling good to have their girls going to education. But this is one of the key obstacles and one of the key challenge which the government is working with the international community to prepare a good atmosphere for educations to girls. Just I would like to, as I said at the beginning, I would like to share a small story that I said the situation in Afghanistan is totally changed. I am talking about the stories about host province. I am pretty sure most of these participants and panelists are familiar with the Afghanistan geography. Host is a province in the south of the country, which really there was no education, and particularly for the girls. But this year there was a man, he was taking his girls to school on donkey from one village to another village. Which means, means that? It means, it gives us message that there is interest, that there is, great interest in the people, in education, to give it to their girls. And at the end, the same gentleman gifted his small land for a school to the girls in that backward area, which there was no possibility of education in the past. But now the situation is changed. So I will stop it here regarding the first question, and I will come back and I have some point to share it with you regarding the efforts and the activities of the permanent mission at the UN level. We are pursuing over here in New York, and I am very happy that Ambassador Milan, we had her in several events at the UN efforts over here, and thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for telling us that lovely story. Now, finally, we do have Her Excellency Rangina Hamidi. She is the Minister for Education in Afghanistan, and she's also somebody who has a long experience of social entrepreneurship and working with women. So we're very, very glad to welcome you. And this is my first question to everybody, which is, why is this campaign to raise a pen for women's education so important?
Thank you very much. A very good evening from Kabul to everybody. And let me please share with everybody to please accept my sincere apologies for the delay in coming to this panel. Living in Afghanistan has its challenges for all those who are living here. And oftentimes the circumstances that push us beyond our capacities lead to these kind of unplanned and uncertain conflicts with time. So please, it was not intentional. There was an emergency that I had to attend to. Everything is fine, but that's the reason why I'm late. Very much thanks to Rahela Jan and the whole entire team who has put this team together. And not to waste time, to come directly to your question, why is this campaign important? I think, to speak from my personal experience, becoming the first female minister after 30 years, we have had other female ministers of education in Afghanistan's history, but since the past 30 years, I am the first female minister in this critical ministry, and I don't need to repeat or sing to the choir to know how important it is for girls and women to have the education that they deserve and that they need. And I would like to just answer your question with the simple fact that if my mother and father had not made the bold decision to take their children, and particularly their little girls, out of an environment that did not allow them to go to school, I would not be the Minister of Education of my country today. So it is that vital and it is that important, because education enables girls and women to take the bold steps in joining positions such as ministries and other important critical positions within governments and the civil society and other sectors, because the tool that allows us and enables us to become and to be who we are, the biggest and the most important tool is education. So this is why it's important for all of us to raise our pens to support mothers who support their girls in getting an education.
Thank you so much. And as you weren't here at the beginning, I just wanted to repeat that I've said to everybody they can jump in, but in order to jump in, they have to raise a pen. So if you want to speak about anything, just raise a pen.
Great.
Did I see you raising a pen, Anne-Claire? No. Okay, so I will next go for our final speaker on this round to Staffan de Mistura. Staffan de Mistura has had many key roles in the United Nations. He was the UN Special Representative UN Secretary General Special Representative in Afghanistan, and he was also the Special Envoy for Syria. And I've known him for some time, and what is important about Staffan de Mistura is that he really recognizes the key importance of civil society and of women. So I'm very glad he's part of this campaign, a moving spirit, I may say, of this campaign. So over to Staffan.
Thank you, Mary, and lovely to be with all of you. To answer your point, 4 short points. The first one, I'm sure you all know that it's not an accident that today, 25th of November, we are actually having this debate about Afghan women. It is the International Day when, in fact, everybody is remembering that violence against women should be stopped. Well, Afghan women have a lot to say about that. Not only they've been suffering like millions of other women, domestic violence, and this has been happening for many years, not all, luckily, but many. Not only they had that, but they had also 40 years, like every civilian in Afghanistan, suffering the consequences of war and for their own children. And now there is another type of violence, the one not physical, the one about taking away from them, potentially, the danger is there, the possibility of having higher education and profession. Now, 20 years, I was there. Those girls in 20 years have become doctors and nurses. And don't we know what does it mean today having doctors and nurses well qualified when we're having a pandemic? And diplomats and professors and judges and politicians, even military and ministers. Now, one thing is not having a right. The other one is losing a right. And that's the danger and the tragedy, if that would happen, God forbid, if the Doha discussions don't include women. Last but not least, my specialty during a period of my life has been trying, like a doctor, to be involved in conflicts and trying to reduce the pain of those conflicts. I can tell you, 21 conflicts, when women were involved on the table, on the peace negotiations, those peace negotiations not only were smoother, but produced a much more stable peace. Are these not good reasons enough to raise our hand for Afghan women today?
Certainly they are. Thank you, Staffan. And now I'd like to go back to Her Excellency Rangina Hamidi, just to give us, both the ambassador and Staffan have given us some hints about why it is so alarming at the moment, the situation for women's education. But it would be great if you would tell us a little bit about the obstacles. She seems to have, are you still here? Is she still here? I hope she is. I wanted to turn to Rangina to ask her what she thought were the obstacles to women's education at the moment in Afghanistan?
One of them was mentioned by the ambassador, security. Yeah. And perhaps the ambassador could elaborate. Sorry, I should have raised my pen.
Yeah. She seems
to have gone, so
we'll have to
She's back on.
There she is.
Where is she?
She's back.
She's back.
Your Excellency. Okay.
I'm so sorry. We lost electricity. The change takes a minute.
So I was asking
the reality of this country.
I was asking you a question, and we've actually had hints of the answers, which is to tell us, and this, of course, is one of the answers in this pandemic era. Not having a stable Wi-Fi is very important for girls' education.
Absolutely.
But what we wondered, I mean, the ambassador mentioned the problem of security, and Staffan de Mistura talked about the risk of the current talks and the return of the Taliban. But, you know, any thoughts that you have on what are the obstacles to women's education at this moment?
Absolutely, and thank you for asking that question. Security, my thought process is that there's two levels of security concerns for women in Afghanistan. One is obviously the physical security that all people in Afghanistan, and particularly women, face. But the security that hits us the most is the psychological security, or psychological insecurity, rather, that many families are constantly faced with in a conservative and traditional society like Afghanistan. I have come across many families who are not against sending their daughters to school necessarily, but they're afraid of the consequences that they will face in merely sending their girls outside to a space that is insecure, both physically, socially, and psychologically, because sexual harassment is a reality here. Being stuck or being at the wrong place at the wrong time is a reality and a threat here. And in a conservative society like Afghanistan, it takes time for people to accept that challenge and sending their girls to school. And as everybody on this panel probably already knows, that one of the recent surveys has proven that Afghanistan has the saddest people in the world, and we're one of the top 3 countries in the world where the majority of our population is sad and depressed. And when you're dealing with such psychology, it's hard to convince people to take risks. There's absolutely no assurance of what the next moment will bring. Our recent unfortunate events have proven that being at home is not even safe. The recent attacks, the rocket attacks that shook Kabul a couple days ago, a rocket went inside a living room of a family where a young brother and sister whose sister was recently married got killed inside their home. So the security threat is a reality that every single citizen here faces daily. The second component to that question is an actual lack of role models, or enough role models. We're blessed that the past 20 years of international support and investment has created a lot of great leaders and role models in Afghanistan that I'm very proud of knowing. And luckily, I think I am considered as one of the role models for a lot of young women in my country, and I realize and acknowledge that privilege. But I think we don't have enough at the local level. And when I mean local, I mean at the village level, at the provincial levels. National level has role models, but when people cannot relate to role models at their community level, it's hard to be encouraged by role models only at the central Kabul level. So that leads to very little motivation for families to invest in girls' education, because they see role models based in Kabul or major cities as a far-fetched reality. And so we need to invest more in creating or investing in helping women, young women, old women, becoming role models in their respective societies at the very ground level. And finally, my third point is to create appropriate opportunities for girls and women across Afghanistan. What I mean by that is balanced opportunities. Now that I am at the Ministry of Education, and it's a very critical ministry, as particularly to this talk, I have data present at the ministry that shows very clearly that while there's been a lot of investment in the past 20 years, the investment has not been balanced. There are some areas in Afghanistan that has benefited greatly from the support of the past 20 years. But at the same time, there are areas that are still waiting to be helped in the sense of providing opportunities for girls to get education. And I don't mean that just by building schools or investing in women educators, but when it comes to fair facts, these are some of the things that are lacking. Some of the most conservative areas to this day, after 20 years, it's hard to find a 12th grade graduate. And if you're not even a 12th grade graduate, how can you expect female teachers to then serve the next generation of young girls? And that vicious cycle continues to keep a lot of girls out of school because the society simply will not allow girls to attend schools, especially after they hit puberty, when there's no women educators. So as a response to this critical need, the Ministry of Education in the past has started a very wonderful and a very successful program called the community-based education model, where instead of asking girls to come to school, because there's a lot of areas that simply don't have physical school buildings, we have taken education to the home of a particular community member in the village. And so girls gather around in that room, and an educator goes to teach girls in their community, in their school, where it's safe and secure. But the problem with that is that it requires funding because the Ministry of Education is not able to sustain that program yet. And the other problem is that that program only works so far until grade 6. So once girls, and this is a fact of just this past Sunday, where I learned that in the province of Jalalabad, in a village, a community has now completed grade 6, but the CBE model doesn't have continuation for grade 7 and beyond. And there's no school in that area, a hub school to be connected to these graduates. So in a way, we've shown the opportunity to these young girls to get education until 6th grade, but beyond that is still a question. Finally, I would like to ask I like to call on our supporters of female education to help in special incentives for female teachers who can travel outside of major cities to go and teach at the rural area, because that remains our major problem. As you all know, Afghanistan is a rural community mostly. Major cities are a handful. And although we still have problems even attracting the full majority of girls to attend school even at the cities, but particularly at the provincial and village levels, it's very, very hard to attract girls to come to school or to get educated without female teachers. So without a special incentive program for female teachers to help them securely go to and come back from a village on a daily basis, it is going to be a grim reality to continue to see thousands and thousands of little girls who are denied education. I think I've said a lot, so if there are any questions to those points, I'll be happy to take them.
You've given us a really incredible overview of the many problems. And I see Staffan is raising a pen. And so is Stefania, who actually was the next person, but I'll go to Staffan, and then I was planning to go to Stefania next anyway, but I'll go to Staffan first.
Thank you. Thank you. And wonderful to hear and listen to you, Minister, and showing how many strong, courageous, determined women and well-prepared women we have in Afghanistan. I have a question. The Taliban, in a recent visit, did raise, when they were asked by the press whether they had learned a lesson, that now was time to actually realize that girls had the right to education. They said, if I misquote them, forgive me, yes, we have learned a lesson. Women, girls should have a right to education and to expression according to Islamic provisions. So the issue Islamic provisions, which in fact in Tunisia and Egypt allows perfectly women to go to school and become professors, engineers, is perhaps different in their point of view. Why can't we ask them publicly in writing to explain what they mean by that? That is what, if I were a woman in Afghanistan, would be very concerned about. Over to you.
Are you still there?
I'm still here. Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Did you hear the question?
Yes, I did hear the question. It's a great question. In fact, I don't know if I need to be speaking about this issue online to be politically correct. But personally, as a female Minister of Education, I'm actually ready to take the challenge, not only in writing, but take the challenge even in a face-to-face meeting to discuss and argue what they mean by Islamic, Islamic framework, because what we're teaching through the Ministry of Education, and particularly with my coming, one of the major reforms that I want to bring to our Ministry of Education is to revisit the curriculum and Afghanize and Islamize the education curriculum to the best of our knowledge, but Islamize in the sense of teaching the core spiritual values of Islam. That is a duty and a responsibility of all teachers across Afghanistan. So there's nothing in our curriculum that goes against Islam. There's nothing in the way of how we teach, particularly, segregating boys and girls, because that's an issue that many religious scholars hold dear and near, that young girls, particularly adolescent girls, should not be sitting in the same classroom with boys. And there's not a single school at the Ministry of Education's, one of the 18,000 schools across the country where girls and boys are mixed. So going with data and then showing that we provide female teachers to our female students, they're segregated in schools and in classrooms. Their teaching material is Islamic in the true sense of the word. The dress code is Islamic. I believe that if we sit and argue with these points, I'm very hopeful that we can convince them that we're not speaking against anything that they think is un-Islamic or that they think is Islamic. Right now, I'm blessed to know that there are many, many women across Afghanistan who have had the opportunity to become vocal in demanding their rights within the Islamic framework. And then whether it's the Taliban or any other movement within the country, logically, they cannot win us over. And if they're willing to sit and talk about it, we are ready to sit and talk about it. But as we all know, historically, Islam, unfortunately, has always been used and abused to get the political interests of certain groups throughout the history. But I'm blessed to say that women are now ready to speak as Muslim women within the Islamic framework with full knowledge and support that they've gained. I'm proud to call myself one of them, and I'm willing to take the challenge on.
That's wonderful. Now I've got Stefania and Milan, both of whom have raised their pens, and yes. I wanted to ask Stefania also what she thought, how UNESCO could solve some of the problems that.
Thank you very much. I have a question and a brief comment to Her Excellency Minister Hamidi, which is a pleasure, by the way, to meet again in this meeting. the question is about the role of teachers, training and preparation to be not simply and crucially the main actors in the learning process, transmitting knowledge and expertise, but also basically the first role models that girls and young women can have in the country, as in many, in all over the world, I should say. So in my view, working on teachers training and working with teachers, and especially female teachers, can become a more important asset of the strategy. The second point, in terms of the importance of addressing girls' education and women empowerment in Afghanistan in a more comprehensive approach to education challenges. I think it's very important, and I think that what Minister shared with us today is about that. I want to recall that UNESCO launched 2 years ago a very comprehensive program in Afghanistan we call Better Education Systems for Afghanistan's Future. Is still running, is very much supported by Sweden, and the ambition is to put all the pieces of the puzzle together: curriculum development, policy and planning, teachers trainings, one again. And it's about also focusing very much on the basic fundamental issue of literacy. As you maybe recall, Afghanistan is one of the lowest literacy rates in the world in terms of literacy. It's about 70% as an average. And the more we can address directly this topic, and the better will be for women as well and girls as well. And this is something that we are going to do through the new UNESCO's strategy for youth and adult literacy, including informal education, which is another important component. Thanks, over to you.
No, but before we go back to Her Excellency, I'd like to bring in Milan, just because we've got so little time, and then we could. So Milan, what were you?
Well, thank you so much, Mary. And I want to carry on from where Minister Rangina left off. And it's so wonderful to see you in this position. But this whole issue of the Taliban's using quote unquote Sharia to articulate their commitment to girls' education, whatever it is. Now, around some of the international tables, and I know we're interested in the international community as well, the perception is, well, perhaps the Taliban have changed. But one of the questions I wanted to put to the minister is, what are we learning already from the Taliban-controlled areas in Afghanistan? Because my understanding is that in many places schools have been closed, or the girls are being told that they don't belong, that there is no place for education in those areas. And yes, there are some Taliban who are saying, oh, well, we'll permit education, but it must stop with puberty. So we've got this view that they're trying to put on the international stage. We are different. We are not where we were in the late 1990s. And to me, this is something the international community has to be thinking about, because as we're having these discussions in Doha and beyond, and yesterday was a big donors meeting on Afghanistan, what is the role of the Taliban vis-a-vis education and that very fundamental issue we're discussing today?
Great. Now I will come back to Her Excellency to answer those two very important questions.
Thank you. Ambassador Verveer, it is truly an honor to see you. And yes, it's good that we are all alive still in different positions. I'll start with the response to Ambassador Verveer's question first about Taliban-controlled areas. It's true that schools have been shut down, not only for girls, but even for boys in major parts of the country. where it is controlled by the Taliban. But interestingly enough, ever since I've joined the ministry, it's been 5 months now, there's been an interesting dialogue where the Taliban, during COVID, when I joined, it was June, the month of June, and the schools were all still closed due to COVID. And as the time extended, there was informal communication by Taliban-controlled areas to push the ministry to open schools up. And they actually threatened us that if we don't open schools up, that they will. But they never talked about the difference between boys and girls, because most of the areas where Taliban are controlled and where there are schools, the reality is that most of those areas don't have girls' schools. This is the unfortunate reality we have. But I do hear you loud and clear that I don't think, in spite of the fact that there's conversations going on at the international level with the Taliban, and yes, the service that they give through the lip service that they give to education is that, yeah, we allow girls to get educated. But the truth of the matter is, and this is where the international community must listen very loud and clear, that we Afghan women don't believe and trust words and promises simply on the mouth or through the mouth, because this was the same or similar conversation that I've heard people hearing back in the early 1990s or mid 1990s, where they said, well, we'll shut down schools for a little bit and reopen them. And then the fact of the matter is those schools were never reopened. So we have to be very cautious. We cannot afford to lose the progress that we've made in the past 20 years, particularly in girls' education. And we simply cannot let the world sit quietly and take all girls and women back to their homes. And we have to remember, even yesterday at the Geneva conference, one of the conditions that the global community is putting pressure on Afghanistan is to enhance and increase the number of women in civil service in the workforce. And the Ministry of Education is the biggest employer of women as a country in Afghanistan. So if, God forbid, we attack education in Afghanistan through the peace talks, we will be losing that incredible civil servant population of women as well, which is a seriously gender issue. And then my colleague from UNESCO, you're absolutely right. The teachers' training is a critical important point, and I want to reassure you, we can definitely connect again. I know you're one of our great partners at the ministry. The new reform agenda that I've brought talks about creating an ecosystem at the Ministry of Education where teacher training, curriculum development, tracking and assessing student progress, and utilizing local resources to start thinking about sustainability of education for the future of Afghanistan. These are all elements that are part of this reform agenda, and I would welcome your experience and your knowledge about how to improve teachers training, because building the capacity of teachers is directly related and linked to providing quality education to our millions of children across Afghanistan.
Gosh, well, thank you. And the awful thing is that we've run out of time. So I can't ask anybody else to come in, although we're halfway through the conversation, and I'm particularly apologetic to our two male participants.
Maybe we can ask the panelists if 5 more minutes, so we can give a word to 5 more minutes. Is that
okay? Well, in that case, I will allow each panelist, but literally a minute each, because we have 5 panelists, no more than a minute. And I will start with Ambassador Naeemi.
Thank you very much. I will try my best to be brief, but let me say a few words regarding the important issue the protection and preserving the gains we have it since 2000 in 2001, and also should be careful for that to protect and preserve them. And beside that, we should work together to extend that. To extend that. And also, I think regarding the peace negotiation, as Her Excellency Minister rightly elaborate the issue, we have very capable women there. They are in the negotiation process. They are capable to sit on the table with the others, and I should say Taliban, to discuss the issue from different aspects and different point of view. They have this capability. I know one of them has master in Sharia. So if someone has master in Sharia, she is very much capable to discuss the issues from that particular point of view. So they are capable. Just I would like to add, if I made some points regarding to the question was made by Ambassador de Mistura, and Her Excellency Minister already elaborated the points. I would like to highlight a couple of points and couple of issues as well, if I may. For sure, as I said at the beginning, the main obstacle, one of the main obstacles is the security. And that is particularly the great challenge in the rural areas, and particularly, as Her Excellency Minister highlighted, the challenges of girls in the rural areas, in the provinces, and it is really a concern. The government is working through different mechanisms, which Her Excellency is in charge for all those mechanisms and all those areas, which is giving education to the girls in the rural areas. But we do have great achievements in last 20 years, and we do have great changes in the women roles at different levels. Right now we have women in the cabinets, and Her Excellency is a bright example, and we do have several other cabinet ministers, and we do have women in the government level, which at the policy level and the leadership level, and we do have women ambassadors. See, Ambassador Ross is leading Afghanistan in the United Nations, which is the most prestigious embassy in our country, and I think in all member states. And Ambassador Rahmani is is ambassador in Washington. Ambassador Kyrgyzstan is.
Ambassador, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was about to interrupt. I'm really sorry, but we do.
I will stop it here, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry, really.
And I will go next to Ambassador Verveer.
Well, let me just say at this critical moment, I want to call on the international community, which had an investment, a long-time investment in education in Afghanistan, that at this moment we are concerned about sanctuary returning in Afghanistan with respect to terrorists. There is no better bulwark against that happening. No better bulwark against denying the rights and oppressing women than ensuring that they are educated, that the gains that have been made are not pushed back, and that we continue to go forward. This is a critical moment, and I think it's a critical moment for this campaign to pick up as much speed as it can to make that case.
I agree. And now we will move to Stefania.
Yeah, on the same topic, I think that in these exceptional times, while schools have reopened again in Afghanistan, we must ensure that all the gains made in recent decades are not lost. At the peak of the pandemic, maybe you remember, 1.5 billion students worldwide has been affected by the crisis and the school closures worldwide, included 12 million students in the country. Out of these, almost 4 million girls. And I raise my pen in order to ensure that these achievements will not be lost and that we can improve increasingly in the coming months, starting from recovery funds, stimulus packages, and international aid for cooperation, investing more than ever in education.
Thank you. And now we go to Her Excellency Hamidi.
With this pen, I call on all my supporters or all of our supporters across the world to make sure that the little Rangina that was once pulled out of school in grade 3 because the community did not see it appropriate for her to get educated because she was a girl, I want you all to know that that little girl grew up to become a female minister of education in Afghanistan. This is the potential we have, and this is the potential I want you to listen to. And I plead you to make sure that we don't allow millions of girls to be stopped or their voices to be unheard because of political decisions. We must allow little girls to grow up to become not just the ministers of education, but to be able to run great nations like Afghanistan in the future.
Great. And as we know from this pandemic, it's the women who've done the best job. And now final word to Staffan de Mistura.
Thank you. I think I would like to end with those beautiful words of Her Excellency Rangina. You said it all. We will raise the pen. The man had the time years to raise the Kalashnikov. Now it's time for all of us to follow your guidance on that. Let's raise the pen together with the Afghan women.
Absolutely.
Amen.
And finally, to end us all, I'm going to turn back to Anne-Claire.
Well, thank you so much to all of you for this fascinating and inspiring conversation. And I really hope that this will lead to some issue and it have an impact. Now that I see that Mrs. Giannini is there, I would like to acknowledge the patronage of Unesco for this event. I hadn't seen you at the beginning, but we all really thank Unesco for this patronage and all our other many supporters. So now we will wrap up fast because we are a little late, but the call is really for the international community to be aware of what is at stake now. So please, all of you listening to us, get involved, participate. You will see on your screen now a form telling you how you can concretely participate. You can fill it, you can find ideas, what suits you best, and send it back to us. And what we mean here is among the suggestions, there are photos and videos that you can send. And before leaving, please just stay one more minute to see what MMM will do with those photos and videos. And you can all the ones listening to us, become change makers, because we are going to make sure that what we are going to do with your photos are going to be seen by those who are taking decisions and actually take actions. So thank you so much for your presence, and just watch this.
Raise a pen for women's education.
Where is the pen?
Raise the pen.
Raise a pen.
Raise a pen.
Raise a pen.
I raise a pen.
I raise a pen.
Where is the pen?
Raise a pen.
Raise a pen.
Raise your voice, raise a pen for girls' education in Afghanistan. Only through our collective voices can the noise be loud enough to be heard, answered, and acted upon. Fill out our involvement form, share this video, and support our campaign.